this video, we'll discuss some of the music ideas of Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. If you go to myguitarlessons.com, we step through most of these music ideas in much detail. So once you have worked out each of the ideas individually, you can come back to this video again and probably a lot more of it will make sense. I should mention that in this video, we're not using a capo on the guitar. So when we play the D-shaped chord, it is actually a D major chord. If you want to match the pitch of the recording, what you can do is place a capo at the 2nd fret and then still play the D-shaped chord, but because everything has been moved up 2 frets, that's now an E major chord. So it's a way to change the key of the song but not have to change how you play the song. So this will match the recording. The first music idea that we'll talk about is 3/4 time. Norwegian Wood is in 3/4 time, which means that there are 3 beats per measure and each beat is a quarter note. So you can count as you're playing, kind of like a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And even for the bridge or the part B of the song, it's still in the 3/4 time. The rhythm that he plays varies. John Lennon tends to improvise the rhythm, so he doesn't really play the exact same thing from measure to measure. He just knows where the 1 is of each measure and improvises. But the basic idea is that you're playing 1/8 notes, and what you do is you can strum 3 beats per measure. These are the quarter notes. But if you hit the upstroke, then they become 1/8 notes. So he's basically playing 1/8 notes. He plays a bass note. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes he plays, just 1, 2, 3, just quarter notes. Sometimes he plays different rhythms. So he varies the rhythm as he's playing, but it's all based on counting, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and either hitting the string or not hitting the string, but basically the motion is up, down, so 1, 2, 3, as he's playing the whole song. Now we'll look at some of the music ideas in the verse, or the main starting section of the song. The first idea that we're going to talk about is the fact that all of the chords and all of the notes that he's playing are from the G major scale. So the mother scale is G major for the first part. So if you look at the key of G major, there's a family of chords that belong together in that key. The 1 chord is G major, the 2 chord is A minor, the 3 chord is B minor, the 4 chord is C major, the 5 chord is D major, the 6 chord is E minor, the 7 chord is F sharp diminished, and then you're back to the 1 chord. So those are the chords from the key of G major. The next music idea of the verse is that the 5 and 6 chords of the key of G major are used for the verse. So if you look at a verse, he's basically playing the D chord, which is the 5 chord in the key of G major. So he's playing that for almost all of the 8 measures. Only on measure 6 does he lift the fingers on 1 and 3, string 1 and 3, and plays kind of an E minor 7 sounding chord. So basically it's a 5 chord. And then when he changes, it's the E minor, which is a 6 chord. So it's just the 5 and the 6 of the key of G major that are played in the verse. The next music idea of the verse is that the harmony home chord is a D chord, but the melody notes are from the G major scale. So in addition to the chords being from the key of G major, the notes of the melody are from the key of G major. What you want to do is visualize that G major scale. So he's holding down the D chord and playing the notes from the G major scale during the verse. So it's a little bit tricky to do that, but you can see how the E minor 7 chord falls out of what he's playing, because if he wants to hit this melody note here, he has to lift his finger from the first string and move it to the 5th string. So that kind of frees up these open strings to be played, and since we're in the key of G, all of the open strings are going to sound okay because they're from the key of G major. So basically he's playing as much as the melody as he can, holding down the D chord and then changing for that part of the melody. So it takes a little bit of practice, but you want to basically hold down the D chord and play the melody of the song at the same time. So you're going to basically mix the chord with the melody. The last music idea that we're going to discuss from the verse is that the melody home note is an A note. So even though the notes are from the G major scale, the home note is an A note, which is the second note of the G major scale. And when you pick the second note of the major scale as home, that creates more of a minor sound, and technically it's called Dorian mode. So this melody is actually, the melody of the verse is actually a Dorian melody. If you were going to just play the melody, singing it or humming it without any chords behind it, it's an A minor sound. It's actually technically A Dorian. So it starts and ends on the A note. The difference between a natural minor sound and a Dorian sound is just one note. So if the home is A minor, you could use the notes from the key of C, but if you did that, then you would have an F note instead of an F sharp note, which is from the key of G. So the melody, if you use the F note, doesn't sound like the same melody. So it's definitely not just a natural minor sound, it's a Dorian sound. And so that's why we care about modes, because it sounds a little bit esoteric, but when you want to play the song and you play that other note, it just doesn't sound the same. It's not the same song. So it's good to understand that the notes are coming from the key of G major. Even though the melody is a Dorian melody, which is a minor melody, John Lennon chose to play the D chord as the primary chord. So instead of a minor sound, it's a major sound. And one of the reasons that works is because the A note is in the D chord as well as the A minor chord. So he chose a more major sound instead of a more minor sound. For fun, what we can do is assume that he chose the minor chord, so the A minor chord as the primary home chord, and see what that sounds like. So you can see that that has a very different sound. It's the same melody, but the harmony is minor instead of major. And that creates a completely different sound for the song. So John Lennon made a choice. You know, he wanted the more major sound. So now let's look at some of the music ideas of the second part of the song, which you could call the bridge or the B section. The first idea that we'll look at in the bridge is that the mother scale is C major. What's interesting that it is, instead of having D major as the home, he changes to D minor. So basically it's pretty clear that something has changed in this section. So we're going to change our perspective. Instead of the key of G major, we're going to actually start looking at the key of C major, which is very close to the key of G major. There's only one note different. The C major scale has an F note and the G major scale has an F sharp note. So because they are so close, they can be mixed and matched in songs, and that's exactly what John Lennon is doing in this song. So if we look at the C major scale, the family of chords now changes. So the 1 chord is C major, the 2 chord is D minor, the 3 chord is E minor, the 4 chord is F, the 5 chord is G, the 6 chord is A minor, and the 7 chord is B diminished. And then back to C. The next idea that we'll look at in the bridge is that the chord progression is 2, 5, 2, 3, major 6. So if we look at the chords used in the bridge of the song, it starts with a D minor, which is the 2 chord in the key of C major, and then goes to the G, which is the 5 chord in the key of C major, back to the 2 chord, then the E minor, which is the 3 chord in the key of C, and then it goes to an A chord, which is actually not in the key of C major. A minor is in the key of C major. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's called a secondary dominant. The last music idea that we'll talk about in the bridge is that secondary dominant used at the end of the bridge. So instead of an A minor chord, John Lennon uses an A major chord, and that is called a secondary dominant, meaning that what normally would be a minor chord in the key is changed to a major chord or dominant chord. So we've changed from minor to major, A minor to A major. So what he needs to do, he's using chords from the key of C major, but he needs to get back to that D chord. And so he's using this secondary dominant to help to change back to that D chord. So what he's doing in the bridge to change to the D chord is he's playing an E minor chord and then a secondary dominant, an A chord. If you think about the key of D major, the 5 chord is A, and the most natural change in chord is from an A to the 1, from a 5 chord to the 1 chord. So once you have this A chord, what's going to sound very normal is to change to a D chord. So that technically could be thought of as a 2, 5, 1 in the key of D, D major. So what we basically have now is another key kind of introduced in the song. We started with the the major key of G major, went to C major, and then doing something related to D major to get back to that D chord. So he's not really changing to the key, but he's using the concepts of the key of D major to change to a D chord, so he can be back to that verse, which is where the D major chord sounds normal, sounds like home. So lots of layers of music ideas going on at once, but they all work together. That's the thing. Most of the music ideas are similar enough that they work well together. So changing from G to C keys, major keys, for instance, is something that is very natural because there's only one note different in those scales. Even though they're individually quite simple, together the song is quite sophisticated. So it's best, in my opinion, to break down the ideas one by one and learn them quite well, and then build it back up into the song and see how the ideas are layered together. There's a lot of music ideas going on in this song, and you're probably not going to understand them all by just watching this video. So what you can do is go to myguitarlessons.com. We step you through playing the song, and also we step you through building your foundation of all these music ideas. So just as in real physical guitar lessons, we'll track your progress and work with you as you're learning and building your foundation. Once you understand the basics of what's going on, then when you come back and watch this video, a lot more of it will make sense. You'll see that all of a sudden I'm speaking your language.